each side, or one person who switched sides based on the direction of where these blows are coming from, because they came at it from both directions. Okay, and the markings actually wrap around, and they got into the thighs down here as well as in the chest. So they got all up and down. It was a brutal torture. I mean, somebody told you, hey, you have a choice. We're either going to hang you or scourge you. I would be in the hanging line because no, thank you, because you're going to die. I mean, bottom line is that many people died. They didn't survive the scourging. You just didn't. There's so much blood loss, and you're just beaten and you turn into a hamburger. You know, so I mean, you're going to die in a short time anyway. Why would you prolong things? I mean, you choose hanging. This was not legal for Roman citizens. Very terrible way to go. Now, here's a picture of a statue that they used the shroud to recreate it, and they looked at the markings on the Shroud of Turin to see where the flavor markings go. But actually, it's quite inaccurate, because every time the flagrum came down on the body, it didn't always leave a mark. When a weapon, a blunt object, hits your skin, the first thing that it does is not break the skin open. This is not a sharp object. That blunt force is transmitted into the flesh, into the under the epidermis, into the dermis, and the capillaries are broken. And so basically, you get massive bruising with hit number 1. And then, when you come down with hit number 2 in the same neighborhood, the integrity of the skin is now disrupted, and that's when the skin pops open. And so, just because we see 90 to 120 lashes, that's just where you've got blood area. That's where you just have wounds. There are other areas on there, I'm sure. I'm sure there were more than that, the number of hits. Now, also, you wouldn't see any light-colored flesh. There would be so much bruising that he would be completely dark from massive bruising. Yeah.
One obvious problem that people would bring up with that is that if Pilate was allowing him to be scourged and his intention wasn't to kill him at that point, that's why they had the 39, 40 minus 1, so that you wouldn't take somebody to death.
The 40 minus 1 rule only applies, that's Jews beating Jews. It did not apply to the Romans. The Romans were under no numerical, there was no restriction on the number of times the Romans could beat you.
And that's fine, but the reason for it was because you likely kill somebody.
Oh, yeah.
And Pilate had passed the death sentence on to Christ at that point.
Yeah, I wonder about that. I wonder, because this person, they went over the mark on him. Okay, and I don't know if Pilate just didn't care or didn't tell him don't kill him. I don't know what Pilate was thinking, but the guards had a mind of their own.
Clearly by more than 3 times.
Yeah.
Well, another question.
Well, excuse me, though. I want to go back. I'm not by more than 3 times. You say? Remember, each time it hits, you get 3. So each lash is 3 hits.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's about what I was going to bring up. Yeah. Each lash is going to show.
But I still think they went over to 39, even with that.
Yeah, but they don't break through in one. So.
Right. Exactly.
But so 3 times 40 would only be 120.
Yeah. Yeah. There was a lot of hits here, though. All right. Now next, after this horrible beating with the scourge, which a lot of people died from, the Bible next describes how the Romans jammed a crown of thorns on Jesus' head. Now, art and movies very often portray the crown of thorns that went on Jesus' head as this neat circlet of thorns that came from the Hallmark store. Okay, notice it's kind of neat and woven together. Now think about that. How many of these soldiers are going to spend time weaving together? That's ridiculous. Why did they do that?
Mock.
Exactly. All right, listen to this. The Romans, when you have the job as torturer, do you know it's difficult to do, unless you have antisocial personality disorder, you have a sociopath. It's not a fun job to beat people for a living. And one of the questions that you have as an executioner or a torturer is the executioner is told why they're killing somebody. Why are we torturing this person? Why? Because we all have the need to feel that we're a good person. Even people who kill people for a living want to believe that they're making the world a better place. Okay? And so you want to know, what did he do? What did he do? And so when the question is, what did he do? What did they tell him what they did? Because they had something called a titulum. What's the titulum? The titulum went over here like you're being crucified. The titulum was the sign that goes over here and saying what your crime was. What did Jesus' titulum say? King of the Jews. Remember, the Jewish religious leaders hated that. They said, no, you change it. Make it say, he claimed to be King of the Jews. And Pilate said what it says. Okay? But that was his crime, King of the Jews. And so the Romans picked up on this. And what were they doing? Hail, King of the Jews! Hail, King of the Jews! So they put together the crown of thorns, jammed it on his head, they put the robe on him, and they put a scepter in his hand and mocked him. And it was all a mocking thing.
And more than just him, the Jews that were present.
What's that?
And
everybody was mocking him. Yeah, I don't know.
The Romans were mocking the other Jews that were present as well. This whole notion of the King of the Jews.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Now, we look at the head of the man of the shroud, we find at least 12 distinct wounds of blood surrounding the entire cap of the skull. They're not in this neat circlet. They're not like that ring that we saw earlier. They surround the entire cap. And that is important because, they're not going to spend time weaving together a crown for him. That's just nonsense. They grabbed together a bunch of thorns, they fashioned together, and jammed them on his head. It was torture. It was torture. Now, we don't know. There's no way we can know exactly what kind. I don't care what kind of TV show, I don't care what they say on Biography or the History Channel. There is no way we can know what kind of thorns were used. Now, the most common thorn in the area is the low bush of the genus Ziziphus, and that particular thorn bush has thorns like fish hooks, and they would dig into the scalp. But any thorn will work. Crying out loud, rose thorns will work. I mean, man, thorns are thorns. They poke you, you bleed. That's what happens. And again, we find 12 distinct wounds around the entire cap of the skull. And it actually, in the New Testament, when they're describing the crown of thorns, the word that's used for crown is also the word for cap. Okay? So literally, the Bible describes a cap of thorns, and that's exactly what we see on the head of this man is a cap distribution of flow of blood. And here we see the UV fluorescent shots, which demonstrates the red sections are where we see blood. So there's a lot of blood on this image. You see blood over the eyes, blood in the hair, where the crown of thorns hold, blood in the beard. All right, so basically this is a summary slide. In the Greek New Testament, it describes the crown of thorns as an encompassing cap-type crown. All right, these are things that are Shroud Forgery would have had to have known. The crowning of thorns is a unique action that only applies to Jesus Christ. Of all the people in history, this is a Jesus Christ thing. Now, why is this important? Because when I worked with Dr. Carter back in the early 1980s, Dr. Carter was basically an ancillary member of the Shroud Forgery Research Project. He worked at Eastern Michigan University, as he was a chemist there, and did a lot of work in ionizing radiation. And he was commissioned to figure out if it was possible for X-rays, naturally occurring X-rays, to cause the image that we see in the shroud. Okay? And one of the things that we were trying to figure out is it possible? Is there any natural mechanism that would explain the image on the cloth? Now, that's interesting. Now, the problem with that is that, wait a minute, if this is a naturally occurring phenomenon, couldn't this just be somebody else that was crucified? How do we know that it's Jesus Christ? Now, if it weren't for that crown of thorns, we would say that we don't know that this is Jesus. Okay, come on. If it wasn't for the crown of thorns, it could be anybody that was beaten with a plague or been crucified. The fact that there's this blood all over this guy's skull that flows this richly, it's kind of like you may as well sign it. This is. So I think what this tells us is that either this is Jesus or the forger intends for us to believe it's Jesus. Now, could it be that there's just one other person in history that happened to get a crown of thorns? Is that possible? It's possible. Is it very likely? I wouldn't bet on it. That makes it's not very likely. Now, next, the Bible describes how the Roman centurions took turns beating Jesus in the face. It's a game they played called Basilinda. Actually, the temple guards had played the same game with them. Actually, I might have that wrong. I think maybe the temple guards played the game. But Basilinda was a game where you blindfold your victim, and then you beat them in the face. And then the victim has to guess which of you hit him. And if he guesses right, you stop. Okay? You ever play that in school?
Yeah, wow. No.
Okay. But that was the game. They called it Basilinda. All right? And so that's what happened. Now we take a look at the face of Christ, at the person in the shroud. Notice a swollen cheek, swelling over both eyes, and a swollen, perhaps broken nose. That's evidence of marks of abuse. Okay? So again, another consistency with the description of the condition of Jesus in the Gospels compared to what we see in Shroud Forgery. this abuse, after the crown of thorns,